You are listening to Know You're Crazy. My name is Susan Denee. We all have crazy. What separates us is how we choose to deal with it. I'm going to be delivering engaging and actionable tools to own your crazy, treat your crazy, and turn it into your own superpower. I hope that you walk away from this show feeling the power and strength within you. And never forget to enjoy your journey because you are worth it. Hey everyone, welcome to the Know You're Crazy talk show. My name is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. Today's topic, relationships, specifically key steps you can take for relationship conflict. Imagine that, relationship conflict. None of us have any of that, do we? So do you have a relationship in your life today that feels foggy, kind of like, I don't really know if this is, do I want to stay? Do I want to go? Am I happy? Am I unhappy? Do you often overanalyze it? Maybe you're emotionally twisted about a professional relationship, or perhaps it's your adult child that you cannot seem to understand. Whatever the relationship role is to you, there are key solutions to apply to re-up your experience within the relationship. In today's show, I'm going to be providing suggestions on how to inject positivity into your relationship. If you are someone ready to take some action, then today's show is for you. If you've been listening to me for a while, then you already know that this is all about the work that you're willing to put into it in order to produce effective, fun, peace-loving relationships in your life. We're not perfect. We are human. We don't always have the right tool, know what to say. Often we get overridden with erratic emotions. Sometimes those emotions will cause us to blurt out things that we really don't want to blurt out. Other times, those emotions will trigger fear within us. Therefore, we withhold, we avoid, we don't want to confront for fear of what the other person's reaction is going to be. When we suffer from the avoidance symptom, what happens is we never truly express ourselves within the relationship. Even those who are used to blurting out their opinions may become across more demanding, more on the surface per se. Even those individuals will do avoidance patterns and avoid dealing with what the actual problem is or what feels. I want to get into the feeling and the emotion of it, because often we can identify a problem, but we feel it. And when we're feeling something, something needs to change. And what the feeling I'm getting at is the negative feeling, the foggy feeling. Can't quite put my finger on it, but this isn't working for me. Or sometimes, oh no, I can really put my finger on it and I'm not happy with it. Yet when it shows up in my relationships, I'm not communicating about it. In fact, I've gotten so good at justifying, analyzing, thinking I know what the other person, or thinking I know why the other person's behaving the way they are, that instead of me being honest with my emotions, I withhold, I don't communicate, and then I place high expectations on the other individual, thinking that they're supposed to behave in a certain way. And when they don't, I get angry about that. Or when they don't, I feel hopeless about that. Or when they don't, I face fight or flight in my life, and I don't know if I should stay or should I go. Should I stay or should I go? I did a whole show on that. Today, I'm literally talking about how do we take a relationship in conflict, apply a few tools, and hopefully turn that conflict into something that both partners or both people in the relationship, whether it's a parent-child, professional relationship, can turn it around. And yes, there is different framework for different relationships. You may not have the same thing for framework for a professional relationship that you will in your intimate relationship. However, there's usually tools in each of those categories that can cross over into each of the frameworks, if that makes sense. The very first thing that I'm going to start talking to with you about, and I'm going to lean in towards probably more family relationships. I'll include the professional relationships as I go, and intimate relationships. The family and the intimate relationships. This can also, I guess, maybe go into friendships also, depending on, where the conflict is. So what I'm going to start out with is saying this. If you are in a relationship with another individual, an intimate relationship, you can also reflect back. Let's say that you're a single person right now and you're not in a relationship and you're asking yourself, well, how is this going to apply to me? Well, think back in those other relationships. Obviously, they didn't work out. So you might have had some conflict. If you listen to today's show and as you kind of sift and sort, as I explain different tools, you might be able to reflect back on those relationships and pinpoint a couple things that you might be able to do differently in a new relationship. Because here's how it works. If I don't change something that was negative within me, I'm going to be carrying that same old baggage into the next relationship. If you've had numerous failed relationships, yet you have not taken time to learn what within you was the common denominator in that, to figure that out, whether it's through therapy, I don't know, coaching might get you through that, spiritual work might get you through some of that. But if you haven't done that work enough to see what the problem was, you will carry that problem into the next relationship, guaranteed, because you haven't changed yet the perspective or the belief. All right. So let's say you're in the relationship. I'm going to go ahead and jump in. One of the very first things that you might want to take a look at in a relationship that's within conflict is what are our baseline agreements of the relationship. First off, let's just start with some simple agreements, real simple up front. Now, you would think that this would have been talked about. I did a whole show on agreements. This is kind of in that ballpark, not kind of, it is. So if this resonates with you today, you can go back and watch the other show on agreements. But here's the thing. What is the state of our relationship? What is the agreement that we're coming into in the beginning of the relationship? What might that look like? Are we agreeing that we are absolutely in a committed relationship? Or is it kind of foggy? Are we friends with benefits? Are we dating? Because what happens is, if that very first baseline agreement of what is this between us? If it's a parent-child relationship, that's a given. And I could expand more on that and go more detailed. I'm not going to, but that's kind of like, we all understand our roles. We understand what we're signing up for. Usually, if anybody gets screwed up in that scenario, it's the parent, by the way. They go from the parent role into the friend role. Anyway, but what's the agreement in a dating relationship, intimate relationship? Look, intimate relationship, you're having sex. Okay, that's it. Or the intention is we're going to have sex. What happens is, as much as people want to say, oh, sex is no big deal, it doesn't complicate things, it complicates the hell out of things. That's the way that goes. Because suddenly vulnerability enters the picture. And what happens when we feel vulnerable? We get scared easily. Vulnerability takes us to another level. I would probably say, I'm like 90% sure that if you're having sex with somebody, you're having some sort of relationship, there's some sort of expectation, there's some sort of exchange of emotions that is going on. Now, how serious or not serious you take that, whatever, but it'll come down to the agreement. Are both people on the same agreement of what the state of the relationship is? Are we just dating? Or are we very clear about what our expectations is for this relationship? Am I someone that wants to be married? Does this person know that about me? Okay, think about things like how we can get into a relationship and then realize somebody wants children, but the other one doesn't. Like, whoops, how do we miss that? Now we're in it 12 months down the road and we've got conflict. Needs aren't being met, yet we missed this really important agreement in the beginning about kids in that regards. So first baseline agreement, what are we doing? Did you meet that agreement with one another? Okay, if you met that agreement and you're like, yeah, we both agreed we're going to get married. We both agreed we're dating for 6 months and we're going to see where this goes. We both agreed X, Y, and Z. We're just friends with benefits. That's all we got going on. Okay, And if you're friends with benefits and it truly is friends with benefits, probably won't be a lot of conflict. So if there is, definitions are changing. Okay. What are the goals for the relationship? This is the next thing to think about. What are the goals for the relationship? Often in the beginning of the relationship, we're having so much fun. Everything's on fire. Oh, it's the pink cloud of the relationship. We can't wait to see each other. There's nothing the other person could say that's going to upset us. Oh, they're so funny. Everything's fantastic. And then, 6 months, 12 months in, maybe, or if you're in a long-term relationship, what are the goals of the relationship? Both people are entering a relationship they believe that they're going to have a better sense of satisfaction in life, more life satisfaction by being in this intimate relationship with somebody. Now, if it's regarding like a family relationship, once again, if it's a parent, minor child relationship, mom, dad, parent, what is your goal for the relationship of you and your child? If it's an adult to adult parent child relationship, is there a goal within the relationship? If there's conflict, now remember, I'm focusing on relationships that have conflict. What's really going on here? What's the goal? In the intimate relationship, when you've got two people who are engaging and hoping for life satisfaction on an elevated level, have you talked about the goals? Because sometimes if the goal is, we want to make X amount of money as a couple, or the goal is we want to travel the world as a couple, sometimes there hasn't been a discussion about that. And one person will start to feel cheated a little bit because they're wanting to do all these other things. The other person's not on the same page. Yet as a unit, as a team, the couple fails to come together and say, what is our goal as a couple? What would we like to do as a couple? Where would we like to see this relationship in 12 months? Where would we like to see this relationship in 5 years? What type of fantastic opportunities can we set ourselves up for so that in 10 years, maybe we live in another state? What type of fun stuff? Are there fun activities that we would like to learn together? Do you see where I'm going with this? So what are the goals? A relationship in conflict, if it's been going on for a while, sometimes there's not enough clarity with one another about what are we doing here? What are we doing here? We got into this for satisfaction. We got into this because we thought it was fun. And now we're kind of burning out a little bit. Just FYI, this is where coaching really comes into play for couples who have the deep work is kind of done. Like there's not a lot of, put it this way, you don't need therapy. You're simply coming together and saying, we got a little grumpy with each other. And now we're really wanting to look at our future and we'd like to get over these hurdles. There's things in coaching that can bring you current with those little bumps you got to then get you into goal setting within the relationship so that you can achieve more satisfaction, more fun, all that good stuff. All right. Give me 1 second here. All right. So you've got, what is the state of the relationship? What are our goals in the relationship? What have we agreed upon? These are things that you're going to want to return to if the relationship is in conflict. Now, number 3, in the relationship, are there secrets? Do you have any secrets being in your relationship? You've heard me share this before on the show. In the world of recovery, we have learned the hard way that our secrets keep us sick. The more secrets we have, usually the sicker we are, because what does a secret symbolize? A secret symbolizes shame. Or if I said this, right, somebody might think I'm doing bad, or there's a shameful feeling. So if you hear the word secret, there's something going on there. So if you're in a relationship with somebody and that relationship is in a lot of conflict routinely, there's a sense of unhappiness more often than not, just kind of check in with yourself. Are there any secrets my partner should know about that might be really withholding me from engaging in this relationship? This is kind of a self-check for each person within the relationship. Once again, if this is a parent-child relationship, the child is entitled to their own privacy. This isn't a green light for the parent to go intruding on a child. That's just, but in intimate relationships, in relationships that we're really, wanting to engage, and this can also go into friendship sometimes. Just recently, I talked to somebody who something came up in a friendship and one person wasn't comfortable with the other person knowing, and we kind of had to talk about that a little bit, like, well, what's wrong with them knowing? What is it that you're trying to change within you in order to satisfy a friendship, and you don't even know if this is going to really be bothersome, that type of thing. So what's the shame behind the secret, and we weren't talking anything major. It was, but that's the type of stuff. So is anyone in the relationship holding a secret? Have you asked your partner, if you're in a relationship for a while and everything, things are kind of getting bumpy, like, is there anything you've ever wanted to know, to tell me that you were afraid to? Is there anything, like, are there walls coming up between us for a reason? That's where I'm going with that. All right, what's next? What is the agreement? Remember, we're talking about baseline agreements. What has been your agreement as a couple regarding self-care, individually and as a couple? What is your agreements around self-care? Or do you agree that it's going to be important for each person to mentally, emotionally, and physically take care of themselves? Was that something that both of you agreed upon? This is really important because sometimes when there's conflict that has showed up in the relationship, one partner has a perception that the other partner is not doing enough. Okay. Now, I'm gonna get more into the perception thing further on in the show. Usually, we all know it's not easy to take care of ourselves, right? We'd rather sit and eat a bag of Doritos with some nacho cheese, or maybe this is just my dream, instead of go to the gym, or instead of, set time aside every morning to meditate or connect with the universe, if that's your thing. It's my thing, but it's so much easier just to allow my lazy old self just to do whatever I want to do. You mean I got to work on me? Because you and I both know that when we are when we are disciplined within our practices, we feel better. As much as we hate walking into the gym or exercising, every time you are done, you feel better. You feel better. If you've engaged in any type of counseling or therapy, as much as that work can be very grueling and hard on you, often we come out feeling better. Might take a while to feel better, but the goal, once again, the goal is to feel better, so we do. So whatever we put our discipline into, whatever we put our energy into, often afterwards, we feel better about it. In the relationship, is there or has there ever been an agreement on what each person is responsible for to bring to the relationship regarding their mental, emotional, and spiritual health? Has that been talked about? Because if there's conflict, sometimes somebody's maybe gone off and not taking care of themselves, right? Not taking care of themselves. That might be something worth talking about in a relationship that's within conflict. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, the relationship, the health of the relationship. What is your agreement together for the health of the relationship? I will talk about this one specific to recovery, people in recovery. People in recovery, especially if we're in relationships with people in recovery, we sometimes, I'm going to stick to alcoholism right now. For example, I'm an alcoholic. I'm sober. I'm due diligent about taking care of my emotional welfare. Come on, my shows know you're crazy. Understanding your emotional recovery, right? Like, I'm all over it. Like, I'm very passionate about that. For whatever reason, I geek out about this stuff. So I'm very passionate about my emotional welfare. Part of my emotional welfare is staying active in a 12-step program. That's what I do. Not every sober individual does that. My belief, and I'm going to get into beliefs, my belief is, and my husband shares this belief, and he's also in recovery, sober alcoholic. Our belief is that when we are not maintaining our work in a 12-step program, that we can suffer from something called dry alcoholism. So the belief behind this is, just because the drink and the drug go away does not mean that I'm still not capable of crazy. It does not mean that suddenly, because the alcohol gets set down or the drug gets set down, that suddenly I know how to freaking communicate. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that once I put the drink and the drug down, that suddenly I'm going to be kumbaya and, Buddha on a mountaintop meditating. That's not what this is about. What I believe, and beliefs are very powerful when it comes to your relationships and the status of conflict in your relationship or the status of satisfaction within your relationship, is really going to come down to the core belief system of both individuals in separately and together. Okay, so my belief and my husband's belief is that dry alcoholism can absolutely show up in the relationship. So if we are a recovered couple in sobriety, and one of us, or both of us for that matter, does not take care of our emotional and spiritual and mental welfare, we can suffer what's called dry alcoholism in a marriage. And there have been moments in my personal marriage with my husband where I have looked at him when we have been slow on meetings, getting to 12-step meetings, or we have, maybe it's just been a while since we've been, well, it's actually been a while for that. I'd probably say if anything starts to trigger for me and him, it'd be like we're not going to enough meetings, right? But what'll happen is suddenly one of us get a little cranky, get a little overwhelmed. It's not our normal go, like suddenly, yeah. And we've had the discussion in our relationship, hey, I think we might be suffering from a little bit of dry alcoholism. I think maybe we need to get our ass in a meeting, right? Or I think, my recent thing was I'm going to go sponsor, more women right now. Like I'm going to start raising my hand again for some free service. I say free service because I'm a coach, but that's what we do in recovery is we have a check and balance about how we're taking care of our mental, emotional, and spiritual welfare. If your relationship does not have an agreement about how you both are going to come to that realization about the status, both individually and as a couple, that might be something to talk about, because don't you agree, when both individuals are taking care of themselves and they've taken responsibility for whatever they're bringing to that party, that the relationship overall is probably going to be doing pretty well? Because when we are caretaking for ourselves to our highest self, and we are actually, taking responsibility for our crazy, when we take responsibility for our crazy and all symptoms of our crazy, we show up better in the relationship. Wouldn't you agree? And that will share across relationships with children, with friends, and professionally. If you are having some major conflict in your relationship, let's say you have some conflict in the primary relationship. Let's just say the intimate relationship. If you have conflict in your intimate relationship, I would encourage you to kind of take a little look at your other relationships. How are they going? How are they going? And you might first look at those other relationships and be like, oh, they're going fine. I don't have half the problems I got in this one, right? And remember, vulnerability, intimacy, all that. But I bet if you dig a little bit deeper, and let's say you're somebody who's evolving personally, you will find that the same hindrance in the intimate relationship is also showing up in the other relationships. For example, if you are someone who does not speak your truth often enough, remember I talked about in the beginning of the show about lack of expression. This comes back from my world. These are things I've learned from personally also, so I totally relate to this. If you are somebody who withholds your true expression to someone because either one, you don't know how to appropriately express, right? So you don't express because you're afraid you're going to start yelling and screaming and losing your crap, right? So you don't express. So you withhold for that reason. Or two, you withhold because you are so sensitive to what the other person may feel. If you haven't heard me talk about the emotional jacket, which by the way is trademarked now, yay, you need to listen to some of that, because that means that I'm so sensitive about what you're feeling that I put on your emotional jacket and decide I'm going to fix everything for you just by withholding. I don't want you to have any pain. I don't want you to emotionally suffer. So I'm not going to tell you how I really feel, because what if I say it wrong? What if I don't do it right? What if I say something and then you go and do something stupid? What if I say something, but you don't hear it the way I mean it? You mean I can't communicate effectively with what I mean? You're actually, oh my God, that means I'd have to step out on it. So I withhold, I don't share anything. Okay. That's another symptom that we can get into when it comes to not treating and taking care of our best selves. These little things will show up for us. These little things will show up for us. And then we wonder why we wake up in a relationship of conflict. So the withholding, all of a sudden, you'll look at that and you might be, oh, even though the intimate relationship is not doing so hot, when I really look at that thing I do, oh, that kind of shows up at work. Like I don't really express my disappointment when a supervisor says something, or when my coworker behaves a certain way. I'm not expressing disappointment. I'm not expressing how that makes me feel at all. In fact, I'm telling myself this story that I shouldn't, because it's professional. It wouldn't be appropriate. I don't want to tell the boss that, because then I'd have to have a meeting one-on-one, and oh my God, what are they going to think of me? And what is my paycheck? What if my paycheck gets impacted by that? Avoidance, withholding our expression. If it's happening in your primary relationship, I would encourage you to look across the board at the other relationships, because it's likely happening there also. If you're having imaginary conversations about the intimate relationship and role playing in your mind and the other person's not in the room, but yeah, you're winning that conversation, right? There's some crazy for you. Look at those other relationships. Are you also imaginary role playing in those other relationships? Because the same crazy will spread across. What do I want to say? It's like alcoholism. It don't care. It don't care. It don't care what framework is. It don't care. Crazy is going to spread, right? Until we're able to get to the root of it. So you've got a relationship in conflict. Something's coming up, and this is going to be around the self-care. That's what got me on that whole explanation, that whole tangent. All right. So once that other agreement about self-care, how do we care for one another? Here's like the capper to that. Here's the capper to that. And then after I share this, I think I'm going to take a short break here and I'll come back and I'll continue on the conversation. But here's the capper to that self-care thing. Once we understand or we have a perception of our partner that they're not taking care of ourselves, and this is something for the couple to discuss, and maybe the parent-child relationship, this would be an awesome conversation to have with your kid too, really would. Maybe even professionally. I mean, I would be okay with this. Do we give permission to the other person to express their concern to us? Do we give permission for the other person? And if so, like your first answer on that might be like, well, of course they can come to me, but can they? What's it like coming to you, right? What's it like coming to you when somebody wants to say, hey, you're not behaving the way I think you should, or hey, how open are you to that feedback? I'm just wondering, do you get a little defensive? It's depending on the time of day, which I'm going to be jumping into some of that when we come back from break. But the point is, to have that conversation up front, that both parties are willing to be asked about their individual self-care and that perception. And when I return from break, I'm going to be talking to you about how do we have that conversation and what does that look like? How do we create a safe environment, a safe setting, so that we can come together and have challenging conversations? Because if you're in a relationship that's in conflict, this thing right here might be one of the best things you can talk about, because both parties have to be able to appropriately express themselves, right? They have to be able to say what's on their mind and not be yelled at about it, dismissed about it, cut off about it, interrupted about it, try to be told how to fix it when they share. They should not be judged about it. Like there has to be an open, safe space for both people to be able to authentically express how they're feeling in the relationship. And I know this isn't easy. I get it. It's not easy. Trust me, I have been through the work and I continue to go through the work with my husband, because just because you learn these things doesn't mean that, all of a sudden you're healed. Oh, hell no. We're human. Stuff happens, people. Stuff happens. All right. Stuff happens. And you know what's happening right now? I'm going to go to break. And when I return, I'm going to be talking about how do we create the safe environments? How do we make that happen? And then a few other great things that are going to be left in the show. So I will be back shortly. If you're looking for coaching, feel free to reach out to me at susandenee.com. My email's on there. Be more than happy to arrange a strategy session with you, depending on whatever you're looking for. If you're a couple ready to get into coaching, ready to do some goal setting, want to see some more stuff in 6 to 12 months, reach out to me. Be more than happy to help you. All right, be back shortly. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Know You're Crazy talk show. This is Susan Denee, and you are listening to Emotional Recovery in the Raw. And today's topic has been key solutions for relationship conflict. If you are just joining me, well, you just missed a whole bunch, and you're going to have to go back and re-listen. Now, we're talking about baseline agreements within the relationship, and I'm hitting up on intimate relationships with our children, relationships with our friendships. Different relationships bring kind of different things within us, but at the bottom, at the core of it, when you're in a relationship in conflict, what I'm encouraging you to do, it was covered in the first segment, first half hour, it's going by fast. Take a look at the agreements, the initial agreements. And when I wrapped up the last half hour, where I ended was, when both people, when there's this conversation, hey, we've got some conflict or whatever, what is our agreement? Do I have your permission to come to you when I'm feeling emotionally uncomfortable, or if something's not right, I'm got something hitting my radar and I want to talk to you about it. It's nice to kind of get that out there. Like who are we? Like if I come to you with some emotional stuff, are you okay with that? Like, what is our agreement around sharing hard stuff? Because I like to think, if I'm in a relationship with somebody, intimate, friendship, or whatever, that I have chosen somebody that is able to at least tap into the willingness to talk about when we have a problem that arises, or to hear me out. Maybe I am being crazy. Maybe my perception is way off base. I don't know until I talk to you about that. Upfront agreement about communication of the hard stuff. That's where that's at. The next phase of this that I'm going to be talking to you about is, how do I create that safe environment to do that? And what are the baseline agreements for conflict resolution? Okay. So baseline agreements for conflict resolution. And remember, withholding information, withholding communication is its own sort of conflict. And it's sometimes directed inward. That's that whole, I think I know what you're going to say. I think I know what you're going to do. I think I know how you think. I think I know how you act. So therefore, I'm not going to communicate. I'm just going to do a bunch of assuming. Oh, watch last week's show, all on assumptions. But just keep that in mind. The baseline agreements for conflict resolution. One of the first things I'm just going to start diving in here. Your energy must be good if you're going to start communicating with somebody. Whenever a relationship is in conflict, most likely the communication has broken down somewhere, or the communication feels broken when it occurs. So we're just kind of yelling, we're arguing, we're temper tantrum, we're slamming doors, blah, blah, blah. We're communicating all right, but what's coming across is threatening, it's insulting, it's shame-based, there's no effectiveness in it. We just lose our tempers, we lose our emotions. As much as that may sound crazy, I think a lot of folks go through that, especially when we're living with somebody under the same roof and they just get on our last nerve and we're tired. There's all these things that can happen. I like to talk about the stuff sometimes that people don't want to talk about. Look, if we were all hunky-dory and everything was sweet and life was good, I wouldn't have a show, for one, right? But we wouldn't be human. A lot of people lose their tempers. A lot of people get angry. A lot of people go so far inward and never come out for anybody to see that they become severely depressed. So this is real life stuff. This is stuff that goes on. And so when you want to communicate in a relationship, we have to, once again, take responsibility as a couple and individually. Make sure the energy's good. Okay, make sure the energy's good. I'm gonna give a few tips about how to make that happen. Because wouldn't you agree, when there's something on your mind or you're overwhelmed with a relationship, sometimes it's hard to have good energy. Sometimes it's like, it'd be hard to say, well, I got so many problems with this person. It's really hard to feel happy and go talk about something serious. So I'm going to give some tips on how to do that. But the important thing is to be in a heightened state of satisfaction personally, before you attempt to go in and get into a serious conversation with somebody, especially if you've got concerns about their behavior or who they are. Okay, first, I want to talk about beliefs in the relationship. Together, it's really important and individually to have this conversation. What are the beliefs of each person regarding the nurturing of a relationship? Okay, this might be more in intimate relationships, friendships category. Once again, if we're dealing with a parent and a minor child, I'd ask the parent this question. I would not put responsibility on a child. I'd put the responsibility on the parent and say, what is your belief about nurturing a positive, loving, parental child relationship? What are your beliefs about how to nurture that relationship? In the intimate relationship or friendship category, what are your beliefs about nurturing a relationship? Because the thing I'm going to be cautioning you about is something called belief perseverance. Belief perseverance. And what that means is, new evidence will come into the relationship. The obvious might come into the relationship. We're yelling, we're shutting doors, we're sexless, like there's all kinds of stuff going on. New information's coming in, but do we change? No, we don't change. Why would we not change our belief about how things are going? Why would we not find willingness to go ahead and address the obvious that's going on in the relationship? And often what it means is we won't change our beliefs because that would mean that we'd have to change our perspective. And when we have to change our perspective, like actually change a belief and a perspective, that means that we have to do something that's going to require work, and we just refuse to deal with it. And so that is called belief perseverance. It's when we reject all reasonable evidence that's making us somewhat miserable. That's the context I'm going to put this in. I'm going to reject all reasonable evidence that's making me miserable because I believe a relationship shouldn't have to take that much work. That's what I believe. So therefore, we don't got a problem here. I believe that I shouldn't have to explain all that. So I'm not going to do it. Even though my relationship's fallen apart, maybe even my professional relationships are falling apart, but I have a belief that I shouldn't have to be the one to go into the boss's office and talk about it. I just shouldn't have to do that. So I believe that. So therefore, even though the evidence is showing me that I am consistently miserable or I'm consistently having imaginary conversations about this topic, evidence is evidence is evidence, but that's almost seemingly easier to stare at than to deal with changing a belief. Could it be that I have a belief that's not aligning with my current circumstances? And that stuckness of this belief that's no longer serving me is where I really need to do the work. But if I suffer from belief perseverance, I will constantly ignore the evidence in front of me because it would be harder to work on it than it would be just to stay in denial. Why do you think so many stay in denial, right? All right, so if there's belief perseverance going on in the relationship because somebody's got a belief about how to, maybe a conflicting belief between the two people about what it takes to nurture a relationship. Because remember, this relationship topic today is relationships in conflict. And a relationship in conflict somewhere along the line has missed the nurturing piece of it. We talked about self-care, individually self-care, and the responsibility to bring that into the relationship. What about couple care? What about couple care? Couple self-care? What are you doing with the couple to care for it? Okay. What does that mean? How often are we taking time to hear one another? Do we have a specific day set aside? Do we agree on certain big scheduling things? Like, for example, one of the couples I recently worked with, it came down to both very busy during the week, a lot of stuff going on, but Fridays, late afternoon into the evening, was a great time to always prioritize the relationship. Okay. So they made an agreement, and Fridays was one of their nights to nurture the relationship. And I think they also added on a Sunday morning time spent together doing their agreed upon spiritual activities, and then spending the rest of it. So they made an agreement to start nurturing the relationship in a different way because they were finding bumps that wasn't working out. That's what I'm talking about. In the relationship, if you've got a relationship in conflict, how are you nurturing the relationship? It may be not about scheduling things. It might be about nurturing the relationship regarding how do we hear one another? Are we setting time aside to listen to one another? Okay. Next, define what a hot topic is for both of you. So now I'm going to get back into, we've agreed that it's okay to tell one another when we're having problems in the relationship. Like, it's not a constant agreement, but we've talked about that if we've got something on the table, one of us is feeling that we're good coming together to talk about that. And then I went into how do you create the safe environment to make that happen? And how do you have those conversations? Okay, number one, make sure you both agree on what hot topics are, because hot topics have a specific category all of their own of perhaps when the good timing is to have those conversations. Hot topics, here's a couple for you. And hot topics just means they can be emotionally charged because they may trigger fear. They may trigger fear of some sort within both people. Okay, here's one. Finances. That was a good one. Does that trigger some fear? For most people, finances might trigger some fear. Not enough, spending too much debt, all of that. Finances may trigger some fear. Let's see, what's another one that might be a hot topic? Sex. Sex is a hot topic. Not enough of sex. I guarantee if there's a sex discussion going on, likely majority, there's not enough sex in the relationship, right? It might go into some other areas, but to keep it light today, I'm going to say not enough sex. What's another hot topic? Kids, especially if you're in a blended family. Oh my goodness. That's my story, right? That's my story. Special category all by itself. Step parenting, children, hot topic. Holidays with family. I have a person close to me that every time the holidays come up, her and her partner argue all the time about whose family they're going to when they're not. And it is a very big deal because they've got some culture things that go on there, right? Different cultures. It's very important about who gets to spend what holidays with family member. And it's a hot topic, like highly sensitive in that relationship. It's a thing. And think about how many holidays we got, especially in the fall, right? Okay. Now, once you identify the hot topics, and the other one that I would throw in there, vacations. Because everybody's got expectations around vacations. What's fun? What's not fun? Where do we want to go? Throw in the finances. What can we afford? What can we not afford? I mean, think about it. I like doing this. They don't like doing that. Vacations. Talk about vacations. Okay. It's a hot topic. Now, the next step in this is you need to discern when the best time is to communicate. Avoid times like the following. You got a hot topic. Here's what you don't want to do. Okay, I'm just going to say it like that. Here's what you would, I can be politically correct about it, I guess. Here's what I would suggest you not do. Okay, talking about a hot topic when you are tired. Either person, if they look visibly worn out, if you know that they've worked all day long on their feet and they have not had an opportunity to sit down, when they walk in the door for the evening, that is not the time to talk about the past due bill that maybe they're going to shut your utilities off. That's not the time. It's not the time to talk about the retirement account. It's not the time to say the big problem with the kid. When either party is fatigued, take a breather. Table the conversation on a hot topic. It's in the best interest of both individuals. Okay, fatigue. Fatigue will set in right after work. Anytime you're shifting the day from one major event, I don't know the word major, if you're working all day long, before you walk in the door to engage with the couple, with the family, whatever you're doing, there's a pivot point that happens there. Allow yourself enough time and allow your partner enough time to pivot into the new environment. Believe it or not, I learned this when I was commuting with a toddler years ago. My daughter, who she was tended to be highly sensitive to her environments. And I would pick her up from daycare, put her in the car, and there was like this really difficult time in the car where she was worn out from daycare. I'm worn out from work. I had a 45-minute, hour-long commute. I put her in daycare behind my office so she'd be close to me. If you're a working full-time mom, you can understand that. We'd get in the car and she would be a real struggle. And I've always been a fan of therapy. So I'm in with my therapist who specialized in children, and I'm asking her for feedback on this. And she's like, make the transition time fun. And she said, just give it some time, bring her favorite snack, play her favorite, tunes on the radio or on the whatever. Back then, I think it was a CD, but play that and allow the transition time to be easy, enjoy, and then give space. Same thing applies to us adults. Allow time for transition, pivoting time. Okay. So right after work is not the time to have a big discussion. Okay. What's another one? Right before bed. Just save yourself the frustration. We have, if you're in a blended family and you've got exes involved, the other parent of those children, it is not time to talk about the exes right before bedtime. If that sounds like a personal experience for me, it is. That's how I learned that lesson. Not a good time to talk about hot topics right before bed. In fact, my husband and I, we are due diligent about this one because he tends to be like an energy bunny at night. He's got lots of energy. I don't. I'm done. Like I'll hit a certain point, I'm out. I don't want to talk. I just want to go to bed. And if you try having a conversation with those two mixed energies, let me just tell you, it is a little bumpy. So there's an agreement between us now. There's no hot topic conversations in the evening time before bed, at least an hour before. The other one is early morning. Some people wake up groggy. Some people wake up like jumping out of bed. There's a lot on people's minds in the morning. Hopefully everybody's doing their little morning practice. If that's when you do it, maybe some quiet time, some praying time, some meditating time, help you enter into the day. If you don't do those practices, let's just say when you wake up off that pillow and that head's a running, just remember who it's running into. Okay. Not the best time to have a hot topic conversation with somebody in your life. Don't blow them up right away because you've been thinking already for 30 minutes and you just woke up out of bed because they're still waking up out of bed. They're still trying to adjust. That is not the time to have a hot topic conversation. So there should be an agreement about these two important times of the day in an intimate relationship, and also from a parent-child relationship. Think about your kid. One thing I am so sure to avoid, and that's landblasting any of my children early in the morning about anything that needs done. I'm not going to sit them down right away and be like, hey, you need to clean up that room, and start lecturing them or start talking to them, first thing in the morning. They're just waking up. They're just trying to get prepared for their day also. Be cognizant of what the other person in your life is doing at that time, so that if you want a relationship without conflict, you have to have some sort of practice of discernment so that you are appreciating what's in front of you and being aware of the environment around you. Appreciate the person in front of you and be aware of the environment around you if you want to have relationships that contain less conflict. Okay, what's next? Oh, discernment. No hot topic conversations, no difficult conversations if either person is sick or not feeling well, or if either person is going through a really hard time. I can't express this enough. If somebody's not feeling well, don't get them and ask them about finances. There might be exceptions to this, like something absolutely has to be discussed, but if you can make the decision on your own, just make it. Just be careful when someone's not feeling well, or if they're in a personal hardship of their own that has nothing to do with you. Even though you're in a relationship with them, their personal experience has nothing to do with you. Let's say they have a best friend die. That's not the time when they're grieving to try to talk about hot topic information. Like, give people room to breathe when they need to. You will be a better partner for it. You will be more supportive for it. Once again, bring the discernment into the relationship and time your communication for the appropriate time. All right, what's next? Another agreement. How do we have good conversations? How do we generate positive communication? Agreement of no below the belt shots, simply no name calling, swearing, or screaming. This would be my agreement I would make with my partner. This is agreement that we have. And no ultimatums. That's another agreement that we share. What are your no below the belt shot agreements? Because when we're in conflict in a relationship, sometimes our ugly side will come out. There's got to be boundaries on the behavior. There must be boundaries on the behavior. Dismissiveness would be another one I would include on this one. No dismissiveness. Don't dismiss somebody's feelings. It's not polite. It's not kind. It's only going to create it's going to create harsher circumstances for the relationship. But what are your no below the belt shot agreements? Sometimes you'll get there the rough way. You'll get there because you guys have learned, like, this isn't working. Once again, as a parent to a child, what are your no below the belt with the kids, right? No name calling, shaming, accusing, all that. We have to have boundaries with our behavior if we want to have relationships that don't have conflict in them. We have to have boundaries within our behavior. Another thing to talk about, if you're wanting to create a safe environment for communication for a relationship that's in conflict, both parties need to be able to hear one another. Simply pause, take time out, listen to one another. Okay, covered a lot of content during this hour. I've only got a few minutes to go. In fact, I'm going to see if I can find out. I think I got like 4 or 5 minutes to go. What I'm going to end with is this, because some of you might be thinking, okay, so this all sounds good. This all sounds fine. But what happens when I'm in a relationship with somebody but doesn't want to do the work. Who's thought it? I bet you somebody out there watching's thought this. You're thinking, oh, well, I do all the work. They don't ever do any of the work. And what happens when I do all the work and they don't do the work? And what if their work isn't defined like I think it should be? What if I think that they should be doing more work? Now, this one can go across all kinds of areas. And I really play fun with the people in recovery because, oh my goodness, we can become overly analytical and think we know stuff once we get some years of sobriety under our belt, especially because we end up being emotional ninja warriors, right? Like we are constantly checking ourselves. So we will think we know when somebody's not moving according to our standards. It's a big thing. If you are a self-evolving individual, this will fold for you. Okay, so I better hurry because I'll just go off on tangents. Okay, here we go. Number one, revisit the agreements. If one of the opinions is somebody's not doing enough work or any work, revisit the agreements. Are they being held to? This might be a nice monthly inventory or yearly, every 6 months, just kind of check in with one another on the status of the relationships. If one person doesn't think the other is doing enough, begin to talk about it. You got to communicate about it. Otherwise, what ends up being is a silent resentment. It's not being dealt with. And if you don't talk about it, there's no possibility for hope. The next one is be aware that perceptions might not align, but work might be done. Work might be being done, but is it being done at your pace? Maybe not. It's not supposed to because your partner is supposed to evolve at their own level, their own pace. Your partner is evolving at their own pace. There's no way the partner is going to always evolve at the pace you want them to because they're not you. They don't look at it the same way as you. They've lived a whole lifetime of having different experiences than you. Why would they change just because you say jump? Hell no. If they're showing some willingness, if there's work being done, if you see them going to counseling, if you see them apologizing, if you see them, with catching themselves mid-sentence, or all of a sudden they're hearing you when before they didn't hear you, there is progress being made. Make sure that you practice grace and patience with your partner or your children or your friends, even your boss, right? Take time to consider what work is being done. In recovery, we have a favorite saying, progress, not perfection. That is absolutely where this comes into play. Progress, not perfection. Okay, I'm coming in, wrap for my show here. What's the next one? I think that's about it. Oh, no, I'm gonna close with this. I got like 2 minutes to go. Is progress being made? And then check your expectations. If your expectations are too high of the other person, you're constantly going to be left feeling less than. You're never going to be in a satisfied state because your expectations are too high. Remember, they are human. They are only doing what they know to do. It's not all about you. It's not all about you all the time. All right. Now, that's a wrap. I got like probably 1 minute left here. I just want to say, if you're in a relationship in conflict, rewatch this show over and over. There's tons of tools in it to help you and to raise you up so that you can have satisfying and loving relationships in your life. If there's anything I can serve you, if I can help you in any type of coaching capacity, feel free to reach out to me at SusanDenee.com. Shoot me an email. I'll get back to you, get you on a free strategy coaching call, whether it's couples or individuals. Would love to be of service and to help you out. Okay, that's going to be a wrap. You guys have a nice evening. It was super great to be of service today. Bye. You have been listening to Know You're Crazy.
Crazy.
And my name is Susan Denee. We are identifying, understanding, and treating your crazy one episode at a time. Tune in to transformationtalkradio.com. To connect with me or Growth Spurt Your Life, please visit SusanDenee.com. That's Susan Denee, DENEE.com.